Hi everyone, and welcome to our daily show, The Big Story, where we discuss the hottest topics of the day right here in the heart of the newsroom. My name is Alyssa Wu, and I'm coming to you live from the Straits Times. We are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, do subscribe to our channel, and if you want to be notified whenever we go live, please click that bell button. I'll be joined by the Straits Times news editor, Zakir Hussain, who will give his analysis on a National Day rally speech by Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong that took place on Sunday, August 18. Now, the National Day Rally, or NDR for short, was broadcast live on August 18, and in it, PM Lee covered a broad range of topics. So for today's big story, we'll be going through them in this order. We'll cover retirement, economy, education, climate change, and also the transformation of Singapore. This covers infrastructure. I have here with me news editor Zakir. Hi, Zakir.
Hi.
Can you quickly tell us why the National Day Rally matters, and what are your brief observations about the entire speech?
I think the National Day Rally has traditionally been an opportunity when PM Lee talks about issues that should be on top of the national agenda. And I think this year, it's a bit of an unusual year. It's our bicentennial year, but at the same time, there's some pressing issues, right? Our population is aging, and a lot of our older workers sort of feel they do want to stay in their jobs longer, but they want some guarantees and assurance that they can hang on to their jobs. So retirement's a key segment. But at the same time, there's also longer term issues. We're not kind of having enough babies in Singapore. There are concerns over inequality. And so one key measure was sort of huge subsidies, extra bursaries for preschool education to help more children start off on an equal footing in life. But at the same time, we've also got to start thinking about longer term issues. So there are concerns over the economy, but it's not just about the immediate thing, it's about restructuring, preparing for the long haul. And I think significantly this year saw a really long term sort of topic. I mean, many were very surprised that it cropped up at the rally. It's the issue of climate change. It's happening before us, but it's stuff that will play out over 50, 100 years.
Okay, so from what I've gathered, is short-term and long-term look at issues. Okay, so let's first talk about the retirement topic. It's been raised, retirement age has been raised to 65 years old. The higher retirement age in 2022 will apply to those born on or after July 1st, 1960, and also the re-employment age will go up from 67 years old now to 68 years old in 2022, and eventually to 70 years old by 2030. Now, this higher re-employment age will apply to those born on or after July 1st, 1965. So, Zakir, what are your thoughts on raising the retirement age?
Well, I think it's long overdue, right? A lot of older workers are able to and really do want to continue working, well after they turn 62. And so having this sort of change in the law would help them. But at the same time, there's pressures on the cost, right, on the employer side. It does mean having to cater for, more workers past a certain stage, and even adjusting, for instance, environments, so that folks who are older can continue working. And so it's useful, I think, that the changes are going to be very gradual and play out over 10 years. In fact, it's only the first step that's finalized or firmed up. The retirement age is going to go up to 63 in 2022, right? And then when it goes to 64, that's sometime to be determined. And then the goal is 65 by 2030. It's really over a long horizon.
It'll mainly affect those, I suppose, in their, like my age now.
Yeah, I think those are our age who are in their 30s, 40s, and even in their early 50s, right? So,
and it doesn't mean that we have to keep working the same hours that we're doing now. So I think that there are plans to allow different work arrangements, right?
Yeah, in fact, part of the recommendations released by a tripartite work group today call for a range of adjustments, and in fact call for employers to start talking with workers about what sort of arrangements they would need. So you're thinking about part-time work, flexi work, even job sharing, where two people, share the same job, of course for not the same pay, but it sort of recognizes the changing nature of work as well.
And hopefully this will make it more sustainable for the workers themselves, and then also for the businesses to manage their expenditure. Because as you mentioned, it's going to be a strain. It could be a strain, financial strain on the businesses, right? And naturally, our CPF contributions will change accordingly too. CPF contribution rates for workers above 55 years old will be raised gradually over the next 10 years, depending on the overall economic conditions, and this process will start from 2021. Please note, however, there are no changes to the CPF withdrawal policies or ages. CPF members can still withdraw some money at age 55 and start their monthly payouts from age 65. So no change here. So what are the opinions about on the ground about the whole CPF change?
I think folks are still trying to digest it, and you had further details released just today. Employers and employees are going to chip in the same amount, although for the initial first year, the government's going to help employers with the cost of it. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily translate to more take-home pay, right? In fact, workers could see their pay packet dip a little by 1% or 0.5%, but it means they will have more funds for their retirement, right? And that's really the end goal or aim of these changes, having workers work longer and increasing CPF contributions really aims to help them meet the cost of medical expenses and other needs should they need to tap on it in old age. At the same time, I think it is also significant because the funds will go to your special account, which generates a higher interest, and even a small 1 to 2% increase. The eventual goal is to have the there's also, again, like retirement age, the goal is to see this figure rise over the years. And the eventual target is, you're talking about those especially who are 55 to 60. Today, the 26% of their income from their employer as well as themselves go to their CPF. The target is for this to go up by as much as 10 or 11 percentage points, so that 37% of it goes to their income. And I think, if you multiply it over time, this will boost their retirement savings quite substantially and hopefully give them peace of mind with healthcare and other expenses.
But of course, this increase will happen in stages, in increments, correct?
That's right, yeah.
So it would be ideal if we were working longer in a robust economy. But as we know, the Ministry of Trade and Industry recently pegged Singapore's full year growth at between 0% and 1%. So, Zakir, what do you have to say about that?
I think it does seem like a bit of a double whammy for businesses, and I think the initial response from some businesses is, this is really the right time to go about making these adjustments. I guess it's worth remembering that these adjustments are for the long term. They're not, in fact, even the increased retirement age is going to take another 2 years to kick in. And hopefully the state of the economy picks up by then.
But is there a silver lining to all this?
Well, I think it is. It's also a good time for businesses to, maybe start to think harder about relooking their operations and doing the best with our manpower circumstances. It's a fact that we do have an aging population and older workers in our economy, and businesses need to kind of get around adjusting work processes and others to kind of deal with an older workforce, right? At the same time, I think they also, if say businesses are doing things in a sort of less productive way, this kind of might be a good opportunity for them to relook their arrangements, right? Can they work fewer hours a day? Can they try and tap on more technology? And recent examples, PM cited the example of DBS, right? As an employer where older workers were not afraid to kind of be reskilled and engaged in using new technology. And I think this economic downturn might be a good time for businesses to regroup and think about restructuring to adjust to changing times and challenges.
Okay, so if you just join us, we are talking about the National Day rally speech that took place on August 18. I'm here with the Straits Times news editor Zakir, who is giving us his brief overview and analysis of the topics covered. We've just covered retirement and economy, and now we'll move on to education. So more families, especially those in middle-income households, will benefit from additional preschool subsidies, with the monthly income ceiling to be raised to $12,000 from $7,500. This will enable 30,000 more households to qualify for additional means-tested subsidies.
I think it's a very welcome move. Came as a bit of a surprise, I think. But many young parents have been concerned about the cost of childcare expenses. Could easily bust $1,000 a month, and that's a large share of your disposable income. The subsidies effectively mean that the cost of preschool or childcare could, for some, go down to as low as several hundred a month. Right? That's the same as the cost of primary school plus after-school daycare. And increasingly, scientists and observers say that actually preschool education is as important. I think gone are the days when you can just start learning the alphabet and numbers at the age of 7 or at the age of 5 when you go to primary 1, right? Learning's got to start even earlier, maybe 3.5 or 4. And one other issue that Singaporeans have been concerned with in recent years has been sort of inequality, right? The gap between children from better off families and the gap between those from less well off families. PM noted that sort of government's going to be more involved in the running of preschools. You've got a target of about 80% of preschools being either MOE preschools or having higher standards. I think this is a welcome thing, so that more children will be able to, learn the basics, whether it's writing, reading, speaking, interacting languages from an early age and from pretty much the same age, so that when they go on to primary school, they get the same, they get an equal head start, rather than, folks from less well-off families not being able to catch up when they enter P1 and kind of
So at the very least, it will kind of increase the standards, the minimum standards of preschools. Yeah, very much like what they tried to do and have done with primary schools.
That's right, yeah.
Right? So that's education. Now let's talk about a global concern and how it affects Singapore, which is climate change. So sea levels are rising, and it's estimated that it will rise enough to affect Singapore as soon as 2050 and 2060. Now, it does sound like it's decades away. Well, it is.
Yes.
Far away enough, but actually not that far.
Yeah, it's not that far. I think it's not that far, but I think it is going to cost a fair bit. And I think the planning and starting to think we should start looking at the various options we have and plan to either set aside enough funds or build our infrastructure, in such a way. Assuming even if sea levels were to rise by 1 meter. At high tide, that's pretty much a 3-meter rise. If things are not, if it's business as usual and we don't change the way we do things or think about coastal defenses, low-lying areas like East Coast Park, and even the West Coast could be inundated. I think it was quite helpful that PM showed some video projections of where waters could rise up to. A huge part of downtown Singapore would be underwater. So I think, which is why I think it was useful that several options were raised. One option is building polders, right? So where you have sort of high structures out at sea to prevent floodwaters or high rising sea waters from coming in. And at the same time, you can have, go about enjoying your beachfront view and in the land that's been created in between.
So that is for things that's still kind of like at the coastline.
Yeah.
It could affect us closer on land, I understand. So for housing, there has to be a minimum height now.
That's
we already
right.
see that. So HDB void decks, they tend to be pretty high nowadays. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, much higher. And I think they're also relooking, adjusting some of these codes, I guess. Even our MRT stations, right? You notice that you kind of have to walk up a small flight of steps before you go down. And again, that's a measure against flooding, for instance.
And for MRT stations that don't have that, like the one at Bredow,
Yep. Yeah.
office, they'll probably have to maybe renovate it.
Yeah, I think some of that, some of these adjustments will probably have to be looked at and factored in.
And we have to look at the buses, the bus stops.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
But no concrete plans yet, right? They have not released details to that extent. Not yet.
Not yet. But I think there's a lot of work and modelling and plans, sort of, being discussed at the moment, and it's going to cost quite a bit. I think something about 100 billion Sing. It's a large amount, but if you think about it spread out over 50 years, 100 years, it's something you could set aside a bit from every budget, and gradually that amount will build up.
Could you maybe now talk about the Greater Southern Waterfront land? So it certainly sounds very exciting. So this is where the port is near Tanjong
Pagar,
near
right?
Tanjong
And
Pagar,
Pasir Panjang even when it moves out.
Okay, so hopefully, I know it's going to be a mixed use. There's residential, there's entertainment, there is lifestyle. It's a lifestyle quarter.
There's also going to be HDB housing there.
Yes.
Some HDB housing. Yeah. So I think it's quite exciting. It's quite an exciting sort of vision for what the next big coastal project. I think PM used the term Punggol by the Bay. You're going to have opportunities for recreation. You're going to have a huge stretch of coast, and it's essentially almost you've got East Coast Park stretching all the way in the east. And now you'll have this area from Marina Bay, Gardens by the Bay, stretching all the way to Pasir Panjang, where all power stations are, that could be transformed into lifestyle recreation destinations. And having developments there will enable more people to live closer to downtown Singapore. I think it'll expand the sort of sense of vibrancy there is. And I think it's sort of a sign that Singapore's going to continue developing. There are plans for the long term, even as you tackle issues like climate change. There'll be spaces for recreation and leisure. And I think one of the exciting things is Downtown South, right? That was announced, sort of a bit like Downtown East, recreation space and destination for workers. And plans are for it to be on Pulau Brani, I guess, where currently the Police Coast Guard HQ is, and that presumably will have to shift.
Okay, so now the Straits Times has created an interactive page which looks at the key projects that have shaped Singapore's landscape. You can view the interactive page at this link, and here is a preview of it. We do have a lot of multimedia with it. There are videos as well that you can watch, so do have a look, and you can access it at that link below. Now, we've just gone through very briefly 5 key topics from PM Lee's NDR speech. So Zakir, looking at it in its entirety, now in hindsight, right? What are your thoughts about it? What impressed you the most?
I think it's the sort of long-term view that PM took, and I think it's sort of, I guess, the characteristic of the long-term planning that Singapore kind of adopts when it comes to looking at some of these issues. It's not sort of short stopgap measures or goodies that come out every National Day rally, but I think seriously considered, thought through policy measures, right? That really try and help address certain challenges and certain issues that crop up from time to time. So whether it's enabling older workers to save more and build up their savings for retirement, whether it's enabling more young families to afford preschool education, and actually get their kids have a good start in life, whether it's opening up more opportunities for students in tertiary institutions from lower income families to sort of not worry about having to work with funding a university education. And whether it's even longer term issues like climate change, I think it's an issue many young Singaporeans are concerned about and seized by. And I think it's rare to sort of, have a platform where someone discusses really that there is real danger from climate change. We might not think about it, and you don't really feel it every day. I mean, yeah, occasionally you find it's getting warmer. You find the rains or occasional floods are a bit more intense. But what does it all mean for us? And I think it was a rally that got a lot of people thinking about, maybe can we think about ways we can change how we look at climate or the environment, and even change our consumption patterns. Reusing items more, recycling, and being conscious of not wasting, whether it's packaging or products or food. Yeah.
So would you say out of the 5 key topics, climate change is the one that you're most concerned about or most excited about to see how it would play out?
I think so, yeah. And I think it's going to be a recurring theme for the next few years, We've had major floods, we've had major episodes of, hot weather this year. I think we're going to see more of such extremes in the years ahead. And Singapore, at the end of the day, is a really small island, kind of 1 degree north of the equator. I think we're going to be one of the most vulnerable areas. I mean, actually, the whole region is going to be pretty vulnerable to climate change. And so if you don't sort of address the issue seriously, it's about more than just, it could affect investor confidence, it could affect people's confidence in Singapore if not tackled.
Okay. So thank you so much, Zakir, for giving us your analysis and your opinion of the speech. That was our top story for the day. And thank you for joining us. For more news and videos, and especially for more information on the National Day Rally, you can log on to straitstimes.com. Once again, I'm Melissa. Thank you for joining me. See you again tomorrow for more big stories.